Sometimes the loneliest people have the biggest hearts. They just need someone to remind them how to open the door again. Roland was 53 and had lived alone in his cabin deep in the woods for years. His daughter had grown and moved away. His wife had passed long ago. The silence had become his companion, and he had made peace with it. Then one cold night, as snow fell heavy outside, there was a knock. A young woman and a small boy stood on his porch, shivering and desperate. They asked for shelter, just one night somewhere warm. Roland had shut the world out for so long. But looking at them through the falling snow, he saw something he recognized, the need to belong, to be safe, to find home. What happens when a man who has lost everything decides to risk his heart one more time? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The cabin sat nestled among towering pines, 3 miles from the nearest paved road. Roland had built much of it himself, back when his hands were steadier and his heart was full. The logs were weathered now, darkened by years of rain and snow, but the structure remained solid. Smoke curled from the stone chimney most evenings, a thin grey line against the vast Montana sky. Inside, the space was simple but warm. A wood stove dominated the main room, its cast-iron surface scarred from decades of use. 2 mismatched armchairs faced the fire, one worn smooth from Roland's nightly sitting, the other gathering dust. The kitchen occupied one corner, a deep porcelain sink, open shelves lined with jars and canned goods, a small table with 2 chairs. One chair was always pushed in, the other pulled out where Roland took his meals alone. The bedroom where he slept was small, just enough room for a double bed and a pine dresser. He kept his late wife's things in the top drawer, still folded the way she'd left them. A leather journal lay on the nightstand, its pages filled with her careful handwriting. He read from it sometimes, when the loneliness felt like more than silence. His daughter Iris had her own room down the short hallway, though she hadn't lived there in 6 years. Roland kept it ready anyway, bed made, curtains drawn back to let in light. She called every Sunday evening, usually around 7. They'd talk about her life in Billings, her work at the hospital, the man she was seeing. Roland would listen and ask questions, tell her about the weather or what he'd seen in the woods that week. Neither mentioned how much they missed each other. Roland was 53, but looked older. His hair had gone completely grey, though it was still thick. Deep lines marked his face, carved by sun and wind and grief. His hands were strong, calloused from work. He stood just over 6 feet, with the lean build of a man who stayed active, but rarely ate much. His eyes were pale blue, the kind that seemed to see more than they revealed. He'd met his wife, Caroline, when he was 24. She'd been visiting Montana with college friends, got lost on a hiking trail. Roland, working as a park ranger then, had found her as the sun was setting. She'd laughed at her own foolishness, thanked him with such genuine warmth that he'd asked if he could buy her dinner. They were married within a year. Iris came along 3 years later. Those were the golden years, Roland thought now. Caroline had a way of making everything feel like an adventure, even the ordinary days. She taught Iris to read using worn paperbacks from the thrift store. She planted a garden every spring, even though the altitude and short growing season meant half of it never produced. She filled the cabin with music and laughter and light. The cancer took her when Iris was 12. Ovarian aggressive, discovered too late. Caroline fought it for 2 years, enduring treatments that left her weak and sick. Roland drove her to Billings twice a week, held her hand through everything, tried to stay strong for Iris. In the end, Caroline died at home, in their bed, on a morning when fresh snow covered everything outside. After that, Roland moved through life like a man underwater. He raised Iris as best he could, made sure she had what she needed, got her through high school and into nursing school. But something in him had closed off. The cabin felt too quiet without Caroline's voice. He took early retirement from the park service, stayed home more, let the woods become his whole world. When Iris moved to Billings for work, Roland told her he was fine. He insisted he liked the solitude, that he'd call if he needed anything. She believed him because she needed to, because she was young and building her own life, and couldn't carry his grief along with her own. The truth was simpler and harder than that. Roland had forgotten how to hope. He woke each morning, made coffee, went through the motions of living. He chopped wood and maintained the cabin and walked through the forest, marking the seasons by which birds returned and when the aspens turned gold. He was competent and self-sufficient and completely alone. His days followed patterns worn smooth by repetition. Morning meant coffee and oatmeal, standing at the kitchen window, watching dawn break over the mountains. Then outside work, splitting logs for the stove, checking the roof for damage, clearing brush from around the cabin. Lunch was whatever was easiest eaten standing up. Afternoons he spent reading or walking, sometimes driving into town for supplies if he needed them. Evenings were the hardest. That's when Caroline's absence felt most acute. He'd cook simple dinners, soup or stew, things that lasted several days. He'd eat at the table, the empty chair across from him a constant reminder. After washing up, he'd sit in his armchair and read by lamplight, or sometimes just stare into the fire until he was tired enough to sleep. The woods around the cabin held their own rhythms. Deer moved through at dawn and dusk, their tracks crisscrossing the snow. Ravens called from the tops of dead trees. In summer, black bears would pass within yards of the porch, barely glancing his way. Roland had learned to read the forest the way some people read books. Every broken branch and scattered feather told a story. Winter was his favorite season, though he wouldn't have admitted it. The snow simplified everything, covered the world in quiet white. It made the cabin feel even more remote, more separate from everything else. Some years the road would become impassable for weeks at a time. Roland never minded. He kept the stove burning, the woodpile stocked, and let the snow fall. He'd been living this way for 6 years when that particular winter arrived. November had been cold, December colder. By early January, snow lay 3 feet deep in places, drifted higher where the wind caught it. Roland had everything he needed: food, firewood, kerosene for the lamps. He'd checked in with Iris on their Sunday call, assured her he was fine, told her not to worry. On the evening it happened, Roland had just finished a simple dinner of venison stew. He'd hunted the deer himself in October, butchered it, and stored the meat in his freezer. The stew had simmered all afternoon, filling the cabin with rich smells that reminded him of better times. He'd eaten 2 bowls, washed the dishes, and settled into his chair with one of Caroline's journals. Outside, snow fell steady and thick. Roland could hear it hissing against the windows, see it swirling past in the lamplight. The weather report on his battery-powered radio had called for 8 to 10 inches overnight. He'd banked the fire high, added extra logs. The cabin was warm, almost too warm. He was reading about a trip Caroline had taken as a child when he heard it, a knock at the door. Soft but distinct. Roland looked up, frowning. It was past 8 o'clock. The nearest neighbor was 4 miles away. No one came out here in weather like this, not without calling first. He set the journal aside and stood, moving to the window beside the door. Through the frosted glass he could see 2 shapes on his porch, barely visible through the falling snow. He hesitated. Every instinct told him to be careful, but something else, something he'd thought had died with Caroline, made him reach for the door handle. He opened it slowly, letting the cold air rush in. A young woman stood there, maybe late 20s, with a small boy pressed against her side. Both were soaked through, shivering violently. The woman's dark hair was plastered to her head. The boy, he couldn't have been more than 5, clutched a threadbare, stuffed bear and stared up at Roland with enormous eyes. "I'm sorry," the woman said. Her voice shook from cold or fear or both. "I'm so sorry to bother you. We saw your light. We just need somewhere warm. Just for tonight, anywhere, please." Roland stood in the doorway, warm air flowing out around him, cold air flowing in. He looked at the woman's face, exhausted, desperate, but honest. He looked at the boy, so small and frightened, and he thought of Caroline, who would never have hesitated, who would have already pulled them inside and wrapped them in blankets. "Come in," he said, stepping back. "Get out of the cold." The woman and boy stumbled inside, bringing cold air and snow with them. Roland closed the door quickly, shutting out the storm. For a moment, they all stood in awkward silence, the only sound the crackling of the fire and water dripping from their clothes onto his floor. "Thank you," the woman said again. "Thank you so much. We won't be any trouble. We can sleep anywhere. The floor is fine. We just couldn't stay out there anymore." Roland studied them more carefully in the lamplight. The woman wore jeans and a thin jacket, completely inadequate for January in Montana. Her sneakers were soaked through. The boy had on a coat that might have fit him 2 years ago, the sleeves ending well above his wrists. Neither wore gloves or proper boots. "You'll catch pneumonia dressed like that," Roland said. It came out more gruff than he intended. "How long have you been walking?" "A few hours," the woman said. She wrapped her arms around herself, still shivering. "Our car broke down on the main road. We tried to fix it, but—" She shook her head. "We saw your light through the trees and just started walking. The main road was 3 miles away, through deep snow and darkness." Roland felt something twist in his chest. 3 miles in weather like this, dressed like that, with a small child. They were lucky to be alive. "The boy needs dry clothes," Roland said. "And you do too. Come on." He led them down the hallway to Iris's old room. The bed was made with clean sheets, a quilt Caroline had sewn folded at the foot. Roland pulled open the closet, finding some of Iris's old clothes from high school, sweatpants, a thick sweater, wool socks. "These should fit well enough," he said, handing them to the woman. "For the boy." He paused, then went to his own room and returned with an old flannel shirt. "He can sleep in this. It'll be too big, but it's warm." The woman took the clothes with trembling hands. "I don't know how to thank you." "Get changed first," Roland said. "Then we'll talk." He left them and returned to the main room, adding more wood to the fire. His mind was racing. He should call someone, the sheriff maybe, or road services about their car. But the phone lines often went down in storms like this, and even if they worked, no one would come out tonight. Morning would be soon enough. He heard the bedroom door open. The woman emerged wearing Iris's old clothes, which hung loose on her thin frame. The boy wore Roland's flannel shirt like a nightgown, the hem dragging on the floor. He still clutched his stuffed bear, a worn thing with one eye missing. "Better?" Roland asked. The woman nodded. "Much better. Thank you. I'm Nora, by the way. And this is Caleb, Roland," he said. He gestured to the chairs by the fire. "Sit down. You need to warm up." Nora guided Caleb to one of the chairs. The boy climbed up, tucking his feet under him. His eyes were wide, taking in everything. The fire, the cabin, Roland himself. He hadn't said a word yet. "Have you eaten?" Roland asked. "Not since lunch," Nora admitted. Roland went to the kitchen and ladled stew into 2 bowls. He brought them over with spoons and set them on the small table he dragged between the chairs. "It's just venison stew. Nothing fancy." "It's perfect," Nora said. She helped Caleb with his bowl, blowing on the hot stew before letting him take small bites. The boy ate carefully, methodically, like someone who'd learned not to waste food. Roland sat in his own chair, watching them. Questions crowded his mind, but he held them back. They were exhausted and frightened, and whatever their story was, it could wait until morning. Nora ate slowly, savoring each spoonful. When she finished, she set the bowl aside and pulled Caleb closer to her. "I know you must be wondering what we're doing out here." "That's your business," Roland said. "Still, you deserve to know. You took us in." She took a breath. "We've been traveling for a while, looking for a fresh start. The car, it's old, barely runs. I've been nursing it along, but tonight it just gave up. The engine started smoking and I pulled over before it caught fire. Where are you headed?" "North, maybe Canada eventually." "Somewhere safe." Her voice caught on the last word, and Roland saw fear flash across her face before she controlled it. "Running from something," Roland said quietly. It wasn't a question. Nora's hand tightened on Caleb's shoulder. "From someone." "Caleb's father. He wasn't a good man." "Isn't a good man." "We had to leave." Roland nodded slowly. He'd suspected as much. The way she'd looked over her shoulder before entering, the way she kept Caleb close, the fear in her eyes. He recognized the signs. "Does he know where you are?" "No, at least I don't think so." We've been careful. No credit cards, no phone calls to anyone who might tell him. We've been staying at shelters mostly, moving every few days. She looked down. I know how this sounds. Like we're criminals or something. Sounds like you're protecting your son, Roland said. Nora's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back quickly. I'm trying. I just want him to be safe. To have a chance at a normal life. Caleb had finished his stew. He leaned against his mother, his eyelids drooping. The warmth and food were pulling him towards sleep. The bed in that room is yours for tonight, Roland said. Tomorrow we'll figure out your car, see what can be done. But tonight you rest. We can't impose, you're not imposing. You're accepting help. Roland stood, feeling suddenly tired himself. The bathroom is down the hall. There's extra blankets in the closet if you need them. I'll be up for a while yet if you need anything. Nora stood too, lifting Caleb into her arms. The boy stirred but didn't wake. Mr. Roland. Just Roland. Roland then. Thank you. Really, you saved our lives tonight. Just did what anyone would do, Roland said, though he knew it wasn't quite true. He'd opened his door when he could have left it closed. He'd let strangers into his carefully maintained solitude. And now, watching Nora carry her sleeping son down the hallway, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, the stirring of responsibility, the weight of other people's needs pressing against his own, the danger of caring again. After they'd gone to bed, Roland sat by the fire for a long time. The cabin felt different now. There were sounds he wasn't used to, the creak of bed springs, the soft murmur of Nora's voice as she settled Caleb, the unfamiliar breathing of other people sleeping nearby. He picked up Caroline's journal, but couldn't focus on the words. Instead, he stared into the flames and thought about the choice he'd made. Opening that door had seemed simple in the moment, instinctive. But now, in the quiet after, he understood it meant more than just one night of shelter. He'd let people into his life, into the space he'd carefully emptied of everything but memories and routines. And already, just a few hours in, he could feel the walls he'd built beginning to shift. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, 3 people who'd been strangers that morning now shared warmth and shelter. Roland added another log to the fire and settled deeper into his chair, uncertain whether he felt more afraid or more alive than he had in years. Maybe, he thought, they were the same thing. Morning came late and grey. Roland woke to find 6 more inches of snow had fallen overnight, with more still coming down. He made coffee in the quiet cabin, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of other people sleeping. He was pouring his second cup when Nora appeared, still wearing Iris's borrowed clothes. She looked rested but uncertain. "Morning," Roland said. "Coffee." "Please." She accepted the mug gratefully. "I hope we didn't wake you." "I'm always up early." He nodded toward the window. "Storm's still going. Road won't be passable today." Nora's face tightened with worry. "Our car isn't going anywhere in this weather." Roland pulled out flour and eggs. "Might as well have breakfast. You know how to make pancakes?" "Yes, of course." She set down her coffee. "Let me help, please." They worked side by side in the small kitchen. Nora found a mixing bowl and whisk, measured ingredients while Roland heated his cast-iron skillet. She was efficient and careful, someone who'd learned to make do with little. "You have a beautiful home," Nora said as she stirred the batter. "How long have you lived here?" 27 years. Built most of it myself." "You did this alone?" "No, my wife helped. Caroline. She was better at the finishing work." He poured batter into the skillet. "She passed away 6 years ago." "I'm sorry," Nora said quietly. Roland flipped the pancake. "Me too." Caleb emerged a few minutes later, rubbing his eyes. He still wore the oversized flannel shirt. When he saw the pancakes, his face lit up with cautious hope. "Hungry?" Roland asked. The boy nodded silently. They ate at the small table, Caleb putting away 4 pancakes with steady determination. Roland watched the boy, the way he chewed carefully, the way he kept one hand on his stuffed bear even while eating. "How old are you, Caleb?" Roland asked. The boy held up 5 fingers. "He doesn't talk much," Nora said softly. "Not for a while now." Roland nodded, understanding. Some wounds needed silence to heal. After breakfast, Nora insisted on washing the dishes. He found Caleb standing at the front window, staring out at the falling snow. Ever seen this much snow before? Roland asked. Caleb shook his head. Want to see something interesting? The boy looked up at him, curious. Roland pulled out old binoculars from the closet. He knelt beside Caleb and pointed toward the tree line. See that big pine? The one with the broken top? Caleb nodded. Watch it through these. Roland helped him hold the binoculars steady. Tell me if you see anything move. They waited quietly. After a minute, Caleb made a small sound of excitement and pointed. You see the ravens? Roland asked. Caleb nodded enthusiastically. There's 3 of them living in that tree. Been there all winter. They're smart birds, smarter than most people I know. Caleb lowered the binoculars and looked at Roland with wonder. Tomorrow, if the snow lets up, we'll put out some food for them. Would you like that? Another nod, more emphatic this time. The day passed quietly. Roland showed Caleb how to whittle, giving him a small piece of soft pine and a dull knife. The boy worked with intense concentration. Nora found a book on the shelf and curled up in Caroline's old chair. Roland caught himself watching them. The way Nora would glance up to check on Caleb, the way the boy would hold up his project for approval. Small, ordinary moments that made a space feel like home. In the afternoon, his phone rang. Iris calling early. Dad, I tried yesterday, but the line was busy. Are you okay? I'm fine, honey. Got plenty of wood and food. You're sure? Actually, Roland said, surprising himself, I have some guests. Silence. Then guests, you? Woman and her boy. Car broke down in the storm. They're staying until the road's clear. Oh. Iris sounded stunned. That's really good, Dad. I'm glad you're not alone. After hanging up, he found Nora watching him. Your daughter. Yes, she worries about me. Are you? Nora asked quietly. Fine, I mean. Roland considered the question. A week ago, he would have said yes without hesitation. But now he wasn't sure. I manage, he said finally. That evening, Roland made soup and bread. They ate together, conversation flowing more easily. Nora mentioned Caleb's love of drawing. Roland said he had old sketch pads in storage. He found the sketch pads and colored pencils. Caleb's eyes went wide. He settled at the table immediately and began to draw. Nora and Roland sat by the fire watching him work. He's been through a lot, Nora said softly. More than any child should endure. His father, she stopped. I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this. Only if you want to tell it, Roland said. She was quiet for a long moment. I met Caleb's father when I was 22, Trevor. He seemed wonderful at first. By the time I realized what he really was, I was pregnant. What was he really? A controlling, manipulative. If I didn't follow his rules, she swallowed hard. It started with words. Then it got worse. Roland felt anger kindle in his chest. Did he hurt the boy? Not physically. But Caleb saw things, heard things, lived in fear. Nora's voice shook. I tried to leave before, but Trevor always found me. He threatened to take Caleb, so I ran for real 3 weeks ago. I'd been planning for months. One night when Trevor was away, we left. She looked at Caleb. I know this isn't much of a life for him, but it's better than fear. Roland understood that calculation. Sometimes survival meant giving up everything else. You're safe here, Roland said finally. For as long as the storm lasts. Nora wiped at her eyes. You're a good man, Roland. Night settled over the cabin. Nora put Caleb to bed, reading until he fell asleep. When she returned, Roland had made tea. They talked for another hour. Nora asked about the cabin, about his years as a ranger, about Iris. Roland told stories he hadn't thought about in years. When she finally said goodnight, Roland sat alone by the dying fire. The cabin felt different, not just inhabited, but lived in. He thought about Nora's story, about the man who'd hurt her. And he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. The urge to protect, to stand between the innocent and harm. It was dangerous, he knew. Getting attached was foolish. But as he banked the fire and headed to bed, Roland couldn't shake the feeling that opening his door had changed something fundamental. The walls he'd built were cracking, and he wasn't sure he wanted to repair them anymore. The storm broke on the 3rd morning. Roland woke to silence. No wind howling, no snow hissing against windows. Outside, 3 feet of fresh snow covered everything, sparkling in weak winter sunlight. He made coffee and found Nora already up, standing at the window. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's something," Roland agreed. "Road crews will be out today. Tomorrow we can check on your car." She nodded, but he saw worry flicker across her face. The thought of leaving, of going back out into uncertainty. Caleb appeared, still wearing the flannel shirt. He went straight to the window, pressing his hands against the glass. "Want to go outside?" Roland asked. The boy turned, eyes wide with hope. "After breakfast. Need to bundle you up proper first." They ate quickly, oatmeal with honey. Then Roland dug through storage, finding old winter gear from when Iris was young. The boots were too big for Caleb, but with extra socks they worked. Outside the cold was sharp, but the sun felt warm. Caleb took 3 steps and sank into snow up to his knees. He laughed, the first sound Roland had heard him make, and floundered forward. Roland showed him how to make snow angels, how to pack snowballs. They built a small snowman, using stones for eyes and a carrot for a nose. Caleb worked with fierce concentration. Nora watched from the porch, wrapped in one of Roland's old jackets. Her smile was real and unguarded. "Come help us," Roland called. She waded out, laughing when the snow came past her knees. Together, they built a second snowman, a family of snowmen. Later, warmed up with hot cocoa, Roland's phone rang. "Iris, the roads are clearing. I was thinking of driving out this weekend, meeting your guests." "You don't have to." "I want to, Dad. You sound different, lighter." After hanging up, Roland found Nora mending one of his old shirts. She'd found his sewing kit and was stitching a torn seam. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I want to help." She finished and held up the shirt. "It feels good to be useful." Roland sat across from her. "My daughter wants to visit this weekend. Meet you both." Nora's hands stilled. "We'll probably be gone by then." "Once the road's clear, where will you go?" She set down the shirt. "I don't know." "Further north." "Keep moving." "Is it? Moving constantly, never settling?" Roland leaned forward. "That's not a life, Nora. Not for you, and certainly not for Caleb. It's the only life we have. It doesn't have to be." He paused. "Maybe you could stay a little longer, until you figure out what comes next. I've got space, and Caleb, he's starting to feel safe here. Maybe that's worth something. We can't impose. You're not imposing. I'm offering." His voice was certain. "This cabin's felt more like a home in the last 3 days than it has in 6 years. Tears welled in Nora's eyes. "What if Trevor finds us? Then we deal with it together." He met her gaze. "You're not alone anymore," she cried quietly. Roland moved beside her, letting her lean against him. They sat that way for a long time, while Caleb drew at the table. That afternoon, Roland drove down to check the car. The main road had been plowed. He found her vehicle where she'd described, rust eating through fenders, engine clearly dead. He took photos and called Ben, the mechanic. "Can you tow it in?" "Sure thing." "What's the hurry?" "Just helping someone out. You. The hermit helping people. Just get the car, Ben." Driving back, Roland felt the weight of his offer. Having them stay meant opening his life to complications and risks. But it also meant laughter, Caleb's drawings, Nora's quiet presence. It meant the cabin feeling alive again. When he got home, he found them in the kitchen. Nora had made actual dinner, chicken and vegetables, biscuits from scratch. The table was set with his good plates. "I hope this is okay," Nora said. "I found everything." "It's wonderful," Roland said. They ate together, Caleb managing bites of everything. Afterward, Roland showed them photos of the car. "It's bad," Nora asked. "Engine's shot." "Repair would cost more than the car's worth." Nora's face fell. "So we're stuck." "No, you're here." "There's a difference." That evening, Roland found a box in storage, Iris's old drawings from childhood, carefully preserved by Carolyn. He showed them to Caleb. The boy's eyes went wide. He touched them gently, reverently. "Your mama kept all these?" Nora asked. "Every single one. Said they were more valuable than any art in a museum." Roland felt old grief stir, but didn't push it away. She was right. He gave the box to Caleb. "You can look at them whenever you want. Keep drawing too. Maybe someday someone will treasure your pictures the same way." Caleb hugged the box, then set down his bear and wrapped his arms around Roland's leg. Brief, but it hit Roland hard. The trust in that gesture, the affection. Nora saw it. When Caleb went to look through drawings, she touched Roland's arm. "Thank you. Not just for shelter, for seeing us, for treating us like people, not problems. You are people," Roland said. "Good people who deserve better." That night, after they went to bed, Roland sat with Caroline's journal. He'd been reading the same entry for days, a perfect summer day at the lake. "I think this might be happiness," Caroline had written. "Not the big moments, but this. Sun on my skin, my daughter laughing, my husband's hand in mine. Maybe happiness isn't meant to be saved. Maybe it's meant to be lived right now, in this moment." Roland closed the journal and looked around. Caleb's drawings covered the table. Nora's coat hung by the door. More dishes than he'd used in months. For 6 years, he'd been saving his grief. But maybe that wasn't what Caroline would have wanted. Maybe she would have wanted him here in this moment, with these people who needed him. Maybe she would have wanted him to choose happiness again. He added logs to the fire. Tomorrow Iris would call, and he'd tell her the truth, that Nora and Caleb were staying longer, that he'd invited them to make the cabin their home. Standing in his warm cabin, listening to soft sounds of other people sleeping, Roland found he didn't want to pretend anymore. He wanted to live again, and for the first time in 6 years, he believed it might be possible. 2 weeks passed in a rhythm that felt both new and ancient. Roland woke each morning to sounds that had been absent for years. Footsteps in the hallway, voices in the kitchen, life stirring around him. Nora had taken over much of the cooking, insisting it was only fair. Caleb followed Roland everywhere. A small shadow learning about the woods and weather. The cabin had changed. Small things mostly, but they added up. Nora had organized the pantry. Washed curtains Roland had forgotten needed washing. Mended clothes he'd been meaning to fix. The place felt tended in a way it hadn't since Caroline died. One morning, Roland found Nora working on a broken kitchen chair, the one with the wobbly leg he'd been ignoring for 2 years. She had it turned upside down, regluing the joints with calm competence. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked. "My grandfather. He was a carpenter, taught me basic repairs when I was young." She wiped excess glue with a rag. "This is good furniture, Roland." "Solid wood. It just needs attention." "Most things do," Roland said, and Nora smiled. By afternoon, the chair was fixed and sturdy. That evening, Caleb insisted on sitting in it for dinner, proud of his mother's work. After dinner, Roland called Iris. "So they're really staying?" she asked. "For now, until Nora figures out what comes next. And you're okay with this?" Roland considered the question. "I am. It feels right, having people here again." "Mom would have liked them," Iris said softly. "Yeah, she would have. They talked about logistics, Nora needing work, Caleb needing school eventually." Iris offered to help however she could, maybe bring some clothes that would fit Nora better, toys for Caleb. "I'll come visit next weekend," she said. "I want to meet them properly." After hanging up, Roland found Nora washing dishes. She'd developed a routine, scrubbing each plate carefully, drying it, stacking it just so. There was meditation in the act. "Everything okay?" she asked. "My daughter's coming next weekend. She's bringing some things for you and Caleb." Nora's hands stilled. "She doesn't have to. She wants to. Says it's what her mother would have done. You must miss her. Your wife. Every day." Roland picked up a towel and started drying. "But it's different now. The missing used to be all there was. Now it's just part of things." They worked side by side. His hand brushed hers as they reached for the same plate, and they both froze. Aware of the contact, aware of what it might mean. Nora pulled back first, color rising in her cheeks. "Sorry." "Don't be," Roland said quietly. The moment passed, but something lingered between them. An acknowledgement of attraction, carefully unspoken but undeniably present. Later that week, they drove into town together. Caleb needed warmer clothes, and Nora wanted to look at job postings. The trip felt significant, a step toward building an actual life rather than just hiding. The town was small, the kind where everyone knew everyone. Roland introduced Nora as a friend staying with him. If people were curious, they kept it polite. At the community center, Nora studied the job board. There wasn't much, seasonal work mostly. But there was a posting for the local bookstore, part-time help wanted. I worked in a bookstore in college, Nora said. I loved it. Go talk to them, Roland encouraged. The bookstore was 3 blocks down. It smelled like old paper and coffee. The owner, a woman in her 60s named Dorothy, looked up from her reading. Help you. Nora explained she was interested in the position. Dorothy asked about experience, availability, references. That last one made Nora hesitate. I can vouch for her, Roland said. She's honest, hard-working, good with people. Dorothy studied them both, then smiled. Roland Thatcher vouching for someone? That's a first in 6 years. Must be special. She turned to Nora. When can you start? Really? Really. 3 days a week to start. Pay isn't great, but you can read on slow days and take home damage books. Nora's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Thank you so much. Leaving the bookstore, she was radiant. Caleb held her hand on one side, Roland's on the other, and for a moment they looked like what they were becoming, a family. They stopped at the cafe for lunch. Caleb had grilled cheese and soup, attacking it with enthusiasm. Nora kept touching the paper with the schedule, like she needed to confirm it was real. I have a job, she said, almost wonderingly. A real job. A reason to stay. You already had reasons to stay, Roland said. Their eyes met across the table, and there it was again, that current of understanding, of connection deeper than circumstance. On the drive home, Nora's phone buzzed. She pulled it out and Roland saw her face go white. Her hand started shaking. What is it? He asked. She showed him the screen. A text from an unknown number. I know where you are. You can't hide forever. Bring my son home, or I'll come get him myself. Roland pulled the truck over. Trevor! Nora nodded, fear naked on her face. I don't know how he found me. I've been so careful. The car, Roland said. When Ben towed it, he had to register it. Your name's on the title. Oh, God. Nora's breathing came fast. We have to leave. Right now. Before he... No. Roland's voice was firm. You're not running anymore. You don't understand what he's capable of. Then tell me. All of it. They sat in the parked truck while Nora told him everything. Trevor wasn't just controlling, he was dangerous. A prosecutor who used his position to intimidate, who had connections in law enforcement, who'd threatened to destroy her if she ever left. He told me I'd never be free, Nora said, her voice breaking. That Caleb belonged to him and I was nothing. Roland looked at Caleb in the back seat, playing quietly with his bear. Then he looked at Nora. He's wrong, Roland said. You're not nothing. And Caleb doesn't belong to anyone. He's a child who deserves to feel safe, but he will. He'll use the courts, his connections, so we get ahead of it. We document everything. We get you a real lawyer. We build a case so strong that even Trevor's connections can't touch it. Roland started the truck. And we do it together. She wiped at her eyes. Why are you doing this? Roland thought about Caroline, about the years wrapped in grief, about opening his door to strangers and feeling his heart start beating again. Because you reminded me what it means to be alive, he said simply. Because Caleb deserves better. Because I care about you, both of you, more than I probably should. Nora reached across and took his hand, squeezing tight. They sat that way for a moment, Caleb humming softly in the back seat. Okay, Nora said finally. Okay, we stay. We fight. That night, after Caleb was asleep, Roland and Nora sat by the fire making plans. Roland called a lawyer friend, explained the situation. The friend gave him names. Attorneys who specialized in domestic abuse cases. They made lists, evidence to gather, witnesses to contact, documentation to organize. Nora had kept records, photos, threatening messages, medical reports. It was ugly looking at it all, but it was also ammunition. He's used to people being afraid, Roland said. But you're not afraid anymore. That changes everything. I'm terrified, Nora admitted. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. Roland added another log to the fire. My wife taught me that. She was scared every day when she was sick. But she never let it stop her from living, from fighting, from loving us. Nora moved closer to him on the couch. She sounds amazing. She was. And she'd tell me I was an idiot if I let you go through this alone. Are you scared of getting hurt? Roland looked at her, the strength in her face despite the fear, the determination despite the exhaustion. Terrified, he said. But I'm doing it anyway. Nora leaned forward and kissed him. Tentative at first, questioning. But when Roland responded, it deepened into something real and honest. They pulled apart after a moment. I shouldn't have done that, Nora said. You're helping us, and I'm complicating things. Nora. Roland cupped her face gently. The complications started when I opened my door. He kissed her again, softer. This is the only simple thing in all of it. They sat together, Nora's head on Roland's shoulder, watching the fire burn low. Outside, snow began to fall again. Inside, two people who'd been lost had found their way to each other. The fight ahead would be hard. But for the first time in weeks, Nora felt like she had a real chance. And Roland felt like he had a real purpose. They'd face whatever came together. And that made all the difference. The week before Iris's visit, Roland pulled out an old photo album he hadn't opened in years. He found Nora in the kitchen, preparing vegetables for stew, and set it on the table. "Wanted to show you something," he said. They sat side by side, turning pages worn soft with time. There was Caroline, young, radiant, laughing. There was Iris as a baby, as a toddler, growing up page by page. Summers at the lake, winters building snowmen. Ordinary days made extraordinary. She was beautiful, Nora said softly, inside and out. Roland touched a photo of Caroline holding infant Iris. I met her when I was 24. She was lost on a hiking trail. I was working as a ranger, found her just before dark. She thanked me by calling me her hero. Then she asked if I'd have dinner with her, and I couldn't say no. Love at first sight. Something like that. Or maybe just recognition, like I'd been waiting my whole life to meet her. He turned another page. We got married fast. Too fast, everyone said. But we had 17 good years together. Nora studied his face. Do you feel guilty? About moving on? Roland considered the question. Sometimes, like I'm betraying her memory. But then I remember something she said when she was sick. She made me promise not to spend the rest of my life alone, mourning. Said she wanted me to find joy again. He closed the album carefully. I think she'd like you. I think she'd be glad you found your way here. Tears slipped down Nora's cheeks. I never expected this. When we knocked on your door that night, I was just hoping for one safe place to sleep. I never imagined feeling like I might have a home again. A real home. Roland took her hand. You do, for as long as you want it. They sat in the warm kitchen, hands clasped, while outside the winter afternoon faded toward evening. Caleb was napping, exhausted from playing in the snow. It was Nora who broke the silence. I need to tell you everything about Trevor, all of it. You deserve to know what you're getting into. You don't have to... I do. She took a breath. I met him when I was 22. I was working at a coffee shop, going to community college. He came in one day in an expensive suit. He was handsome, successful, confident. Everything I wasn't. Roland listened without interrupting, just holding her hand. He pursued me hard. Flowers, dinners, weekend trips. I felt like Cinderella. We were married within 6 months. Nora's voice went flat. The honeymoon lasted about 3 weeks. Then the real Trevor emerged. She told him about the gradual escalation. First it was small comments about her clothes, her friends. Then it was rules. Call him every hour. Ask permission to leave the house. Account for every dollar. When she pushed back, he'd explode, then apologize, then punish her with silence until she broke. He never hit me. Not with his fists. He was too smart for that. No visible bruises. But he'd grab my arm hard enough to leave marks under my sleeves. He'd back me into corners, make me feel small and scared. He'd threaten to hurt himself if I left, threaten to ruin my life. When did you get pregnant? Roland asked gently. About a year in. I thought maybe a baby would change him. I was so naive. She wiped at her eyes. Caleb was born and Trevor got worse. He saw our son as property, as another thing to control. By the time Caleb was 3, he'd stopped coming to me for comfort. He'd just watch everything with these wide, scared eyes. Roland felt rage building, but kept his voice calm. What made you finally leave? Trevor came home drunk one night. Started yelling at Caleb for leaving toys out. The baby was 4 years old, Roland, 4, and Trevor backed him into a corner, screaming, his face red with rage. Caleb was sobbing, terrified, and I saw it, saw the moment my son's spirit started to break. Just like mine had broken. Her voice shook but didn't stop. I put myself between them. Told Trevor to back off. He shoved me so hard I hit the wall. Caleb saw it. Saw his father hurt his mother, and something in me snapped. I realized if I didn't get us out, Trevor would destroy us both. So you planned your escape. For 3 months. I hid cash every chance I got. Made copies of documents. Talked to a lawyer when Trevor was at work. Got the restraining order ready to file. And one night when he was away on a business trip we'd left. Just walked out with 2 bags and never looked back. And he's been hunting you ever since. Yes, he filed missing person reports. Claimed I kidnapped Caleb, used his prosecutor connections to track us. Every time we settled somewhere, he'd find us. She looked at Roland. Until our car died and we ended up here. At your door, Roland was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Nora asked, calling my friend. The lawyer. Getting this process started right now. He waited for the call to connect. Trevor needs to learn something. He might be powerful in his world, but this is my world. And here bullies don't win. Over the next few days, things moved quickly. The lawyer, a woman named Patricia who specialized in domestic violence cases, took Nora's case pro bono after hearing the story. She was in her 50s, sharp as a knife, with no patience for abusive men. We're going to bury him in documentation, Patricia said during their first meeting at the cabin. Every threatening message, every violation of the restraining order, every witness statement. She explained the process, filing for full custody, documenting Trevor's pattern of abuse, gathering character witnesses. It would take time, months maybe, but Patricia was confident. Men like Trevor rely on fear and isolation, she said. They count on their victims being too scared or too broke to fight back. But you have support now. That changes the game. Iris arrived that weekend as promised, her SUV packed with bags. She was 31, with her mother's warm eyes and her father's quiet strength. She hugged Roland tight, then turned to Nora and Caleb with genuine warmth. I've heard so much about you both, she said. I'm so glad you're here. She'd brought clothes for Nora, practical things that fit, winter coats and sturdy boots. For Caleb, she had toys and books, including some of her old favorites. The boy's eyes went wide at the sight of a wooden train set. My grandpa made this for me, Iris told him. Now it's yours. They spent the day together, and Roland watched his daughter interact with Nora and Caleb. The easy way they talked, the natural warmth. By evening, they were cooking dinner together, laughing at stories. After Caleb went to bed, the 3 adults sat by the fire. Iris looked at her father with wonder. You seem different, she said. Lighter, more like yourself. I feel different, Roland admitted. More alive than I have in years. Mom would approve, you know. Of all of this, Iris smiled at Nora. She always said the best thing you could do for people was make them feel seen. Like they mattered. That's what you've done for Dad. He matters to us, Nora said quietly. More than he probably realizes. Later, Roland walked Iris out to her car. She hugged him again, fierce and tight. I'm proud of you, Dad, for opening your heart again. For standing up for them. I'm just doing what's right. No, you're doing what's brave. There's a difference. She pulled back. Just promise me you'll be careful. If this Trevor is as dangerous as Nora says, I'll be careful, Roland assured her. But I won't back down, Iris nodded, satisfied. Good, because they need you. And I think maybe you need them too. After she drove away, Roland stood in the driveway looking up at the stars. The night was cold and clear, the kind that made you feel small and connected to something larger. He thought about the path that had led him here, Caroline's death, the years of isolation, the snowy night when he'd opened his door. Every choice, every loss, every moment had brought him to this point, to Nora and Caleb, to the possibility of love and family again. Inside, the cabin glowed with warm light. Through the window he could see Nora moving around the kitchen. It looked like home. It felt like home. And Roland realized that's exactly what it had become. not just his refuge, but their shared sanctuary. Whatever came next, whatever fight they had to face, they'd face it together. And that made all the difference in the world. The morning started like any other. Roland woke early, made coffee, watched the sunrise paint the mountains gold. Nora emerged and joined him at the window, accepting the mug he offered. "Beautiful," she said. They made breakfast together, the rhythm comfortable now. Caleb appeared, sleepy-eyed, and climbed into his chair with his stuffed bear. It was a Tuesday, one of Nora's workdays at the bookstore. Then came the knock at the door. Roland and Nora exchanged glances. They weren't expecting anyone. Roland moved to the window and looked out. A sheriff's deputy stood on the porch, official and uncomfortable. Roland opened the door. "Morning, deputy." "Something wrong?" The deputy, young, maybe late 20s, looked apologetic. "Morning, Mr. Thatcher. I'm Deputy Carson. I need to speak with a Nora Whitfield if she's here." Nora appeared behind Roland, her face pale. "I'm Nora Whitfield. Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions. May I come in?" They led him to the living room. Caleb had gone quiet, sensing the tension. Nora pulled him close while Roland stood nearby. Deputy Carson pulled out a notebook. "Ma'am, there's been a missing persons report filed on you and your son. The father, a Trevor Whitfield, claims you took the child without permission. He's asking for a welfare check." "There's a restraining order," Nora said, her voice shaking, "against Trevor. For domestic violence. I have copies. I'd like to see those, please." Nora retrieved the documents, hands trembling. The deputy studied them carefully. "These appear legitimate," he said. "Filed 3 weeks ago in Wyoming. Restraining order is active. Then why are you here?" Roland asked. Deputy Carson sighed. "Because Mr. Whitfield filed his report with multiple jurisdictions, including ours. And because The deputy paused. "He's a prosecutor, state level. He has resources and connections, and he's been very persistent." The words landed like a blow. Roland felt Nora go rigid beside him. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means he's been using his position to track you. County by county, state by state. When your vehicle was registered for towing here, it triggered an alert. Mr. Whitfield was notified." Deputy Carson looked genuinely sympathetic. "I'm required to verify your safety and the child's well-being. File a report. That's all I'm doing here today." "And then Trevor gets that report," Nora said bitterly. "Gets confirmation of exactly where we are. Ma'am, I understand this is difficult, but I have a legal obligation." "I understand." Nora's voice was steadier now. "I'm safe. My son is safe. We're staying here voluntarily. Trevor is violent and controlling, which is why I have the restraining order." They spent the next hour going through documentation. The deputy was professional and seemed genuinely concerned. He noted the restraining order, the evidence of abuse, the stable living situation. Finally, Deputy Carson stood to leave. "My report will reflect that you and the child are safe. The restraining order remains in effect. If Mr. Whitfield attempts to contact you or come here, call 911 immediately." "Will that stop him?" Roland asked. The deputy's expression darkened. "Between us? Probably not. Men like him, powerful men who are used to getting their way, they don't respond well to being told no. The restraining order is legal protection, but paper doesn't stop bullets." He caught himself. "I'm not trying to scare you. Just be careful." After he left, Nora collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Roland sat beside her, pulling her close while Caleb climbed into her lap. "He knows," she whispered. "Trevor knows exactly where we are." "Then we prepare," Roland said firmly. "We don't run. We face this head on." He called Patricia immediately. The lawyer's voice was grim but determined. "This is actually good news," she said. "How is any of this good?" Roland demanded. "Because now it's out in the open. Trevor's made his move, filed reports, used his position to track her. That's harassment. That's abuse of power. We can use this." Patricia's voice sharpened. "I'm going to file an emergency motion for full custody. We're going to force this into court, on our terms, in your jurisdiction." "How long will that take?" "Days, maybe a week. But Trevor won't wait for court. He'll come there himself, probably with his lawyer, trying to intimidate Nora into coming back." "He's not winning this time," Roland said. After hanging up, he found Nora packing their belongings. "What are you doing?" Roland asked. "We have to leave. Before Trevor gets here." "I won't let him hurt you, Roland." "Stop." Roland took the bag from her hands. "You're not leaving. We talked about this. That was before Trevor knew where we were. He's dangerous, then we'll deal with it together. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Roland's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "I understand that Trevor is a bully. I understand that he expects you to run, because that's what you've always done." He took her hands. "But you're not alone anymore. And I'm not afraid of him. You should be. Maybe, but I'm more afraid of losing you and Caleb." He pulled her close. "I lost my wife to cancer. I couldn't fight that. But this I can fight. And I will," Nora cried against his shoulder while Caleb watched. The boy came over and wrapped his arms around both of them, holding on tight. That afternoon, Roland made preparations. He called his neighbor Frank, asked him to keep an eye out. He called Sheriff Garrett, explained the situation. "Need a favor," Roland said. "Got a situation developing. Woman and her kid staying with me, running from an abusive ex who's a state prosecutor. He's tracked them here, probably coming soon. You need protection. Just need someone who'll respond fast if I call, and someone who won't be impressed by a prosecutor throwing his weight around." "Consider it done," Garrett said. "And Roland, be careful. Desperate men do desperate things." Evening came cold and clear. They ate dinner together, but the mood was subdued. Afterward, Nora read to Caleb longer than usual, holding him close. When she emerged, she found Roland at the table with papers spread out, copies of everything related to the restraining order, the abuse documentation, Patricia's contact information. "Being thorough," he explained. Nora sat beside him. "Why are you doing this, really? You could tell us to leave, wash your hands of the whole mess." Roland was quiet for a moment. "There are moments in life when you're called to stand up, to be brave. Caroline's death taught me that life is short and precious. These past weeks taught me that it's worth living again." He met her eyes. "I'm doing this because it's right, because you deserve to be protected, because I love you both." Nora's breath caught. "You love us?" "Yes, I do." "I love you. I love that boy sleeping in there. I love the family we've become. And I'll be damned if I let Trevor destroy that." She kissed him then, deep and desperate. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you too," she whispered. The next morning, Roland woke to his phone ringing. Unknown number. "Is this Roland Thatcher?" Male voice, smooth and confident. "Who's asking?" "Trevor Whitfield. I believe you have my wife and son staying with you." Roland's grip tightened. "I have Nora and Caleb Whitfield staying here, yes. Your ex-wife. And they're here voluntarily, under protection of an active restraining order. Let me be very clear, Mr. Thatcher. Nora is unstable. She kidnapped my son. I have every legal right to recover him. I understand domestic violence. I understand bullies who use their position to abuse and control." Roland kept his voice level. "And I understand the law says you're supposed to stay away from them. So this call? This is violation number 1. You have no idea who you're dealing with, and you have no idea who you're threatening. You want to see them, you go through the courts. You come near this property, you deal with the sheriff. Are we clear?" "Crystal." "But understand this, I always get what I want, always. I'll see you soon." The line went dead. Roland stood in the kitchen, adrenaline coursing through him. Trevor had made his move. The threat was real and immediate, but so was Roland's resolve. He called Patricia, relayed the conversation. Perfect. He violated the restraining order with that call. "File a report immediately." Patricia's voice was sharp. "The emergency custody hearing is scheduled for 3 days from now. All we have to do is keep Nora and Caleb safe until then. 3 days." Roland looked out at the peaceful morning, knowing that peace was about to shatter. But he'd faced hard things before. He could survive this too, because now he had something worth fighting for. The next 3 days passed in strange combination of normalcy and preparation. Nora still went to work, though Roland insisted on driving her. Caleb still played and drew pictures, though he stayed closer to the adults. And Roland prepared quietly, in the way he'd learned during his years as a ranger. He didn't tell Nora everything. Didn't mention asking Frank to patrol the road. Didn't mention conversations with Sheriff Garrett about response times. Didn't mention pulling out his old military medals from storage. Nora found him one evening, the medals spread on the table. A Purple Heart, a Bronze Star. "I didn't know you served," she said quietly. "Long time ago. I was 25, thought I was invincible." Roland touched the Purple Heart. "Iraq, First Gulf War. I was a medic. Saw things no one should see. Came home different. Is that why you became a ranger?" "Partly. Needed somewhere to heal. Found it here with Carolyn." He gathered the medals. "Funny thing about survival. You learn you're tougher than you think. That sometimes the bravest thing is just to keep going. Why are you telling me this?" Roland met her eyes. "Because I want you to understand I've faced dangerous men before. I know what it means to protect people. Trevor doesn't scare me." Patricia called daily with updates. The emergency custody hearing was set for Friday morning. She'd lined up character witnesses, Dorothy, Sheriff Garrett, even Iris. "The judge is Alice Brennan," Patricia told them Wednesday. "She's fair, no nonsense, and doesn't tolerate abusive behavior." "What's our strategy?" Roland asked. "Simple truth. Nora fled an abusive situation to protect her child. She's established a stable home. Trevor's pattern of control is well documented," Iris called that evening. "I'm coming up tomorrow, staying through the hearing. I want to be there. You don't have to. Dad, you stood up for them. The least I can do is stand up for you." Thursday morning arrived grey and heavy. Roland was outside splitting wood when Frank called. "Got a vehicle coming up your road. Black Mercedes SUV, rental plates. 2 men in suits." Roland's stomach tightened. "How far out?" 10 minutes, Roland went inside, keeping his voice calm. "Nora, take Caleb to his room. Stay there until I come get you." She read his face instantly. "He's coming. Looks like it. Just stay calm." "I'll handle this." Nora gathered Caleb quickly. As they disappeared down the hall, Roland called Sheriff Garrett. "He's here," Roland said simply. "On my way." 20 minutes. Roland stood at the window watching. A black Mercedes appeared, pulling up beside his truck. 2 men got out. The first was clearly Trevor, mid-30s, tall and fit, expensive suit under a designer coat, handsome in a polished way. The second was older, carrying a briefcase. The lawyer. Roland opened the door before they could knock, stepping onto the porch and pulling it closed behind him. The cold hit him. He'd come out without a coat, but he didn't flinch. "Mr. Thatcher?" Trevor asked. "That's right. And you're trespassing. There's an active restraining order. I'm here to see my son." "No, not with the restraining order. Not after your pattern of harassment." Roland kept his voice level. "Sheriff's on his way. You should leave." Trevor's jaw tightened. "You have no idea what you're interfering with." "Nora is my wife, ex-wife. She kidnapped my son." "I'm a prosecutor, Mr. Thatcher. I know the law. And I know the law, too. Restraining order means you stay away. You're violating it right now." The lawyer stepped forward. "Mr. Thatcher, surely we can resolve this reasonably. He's safe. He's happy. And he's staying right where he is." Trevor's composure cracked. "Let me see my son. Now." "No, you're making a serious mistake. The only mistake is you thinking your position means you can violate court orders." Roland didn't move. "You've abused Nora for years. That stops now." Trevor took a step forward, aggression replacing polish. "I could have you arrested." "She's not a fugitive. She's a survivor with an active restraining order." Trevor moved closer, trying to use his height to intimidate. "You think you're some kind of hero? Nora's manipulated you. That's what she does." Roland didn't react. "I think you're scared. You're used to controlling people through fear, and you can't handle that Nora found courage to leave. I'm not scared. You should be. Because tomorrow you're going to stand in front of a judge and answer for everything. And all your connections won't save you from the truth." Trevor's face flushed red. The lawyer intervened, pulling Trevor back. "We'll see you in court tomorrow, Mr. Thatcher." "Looking forward to it," Roland said. They retreated to the Mercedes. As they drove away, Roland finally allowed himself to exhale. He went back inside to find Nora in the hallway. Caleb clutched against her. She'd heard everything. "You stood up to him," she said, wonder in her voice. "Of course I did. No one's ever—" Her voice broke. No one's ever stood up to him like that. Roland pulled them both into his arms. I'm not scared of him, and you shouldn't be either. Caleb looked up at Roland with hero worship. The boy reached up and patted Roland's face gently. Sheriff Garrett arrived 15 minutes later, taking Roland's statement. He was angry that Trevor had violated the restraining order. I'll file a report. Judge Brennan will hear about this. He looked at Roland with respect. You handled that well. But be careful. Men like him don't respond well to being challenged. I know. But I'm not backing down. That evening, with Caleb asleep and Iris in the guest room, Roland and Nora sat by the fire. I'm terrified about tomorrow, Nora admitted. What if the judge believes him? You won't lose him. We have truth on our side. We have evidence, Roland took her hand. And we have each other. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. You deserve safety and love and a life free from fear. He kissed her forehead. And after tomorrow, we're going to start building that life. Really building it. What does that look like? Roland smiled. I'm thinking maybe you and Caleb stay here permanently. Maybe we make this official. You, me, us. Maybe we become a real family. Nora's eyes filled with tears. Are you asking what I think you're asking? Not yet. Not until this is settled. But yes, eventually. He cupped her face. I want to marry you, Nora. I want to adopt Caleb. I want us to be a family in every way that matters. She kissed him then, deep and full of hope. Tomorrow, Nora said. We get through tomorrow. Then we start building our future. Tomorrow, Roland agreed. They sat together in the firelight, knowing the next day would determine everything. But for this moment they had each other. They had hope, and sometimes that was enough to face anything. Friday morning arrived cold and bright. Roland woke before dawn, unable to sleep. Nora appeared beside him, already dressed in a simple navy dress and cardigan. She looked terrified and determined. Ready? Roland asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. They woke Caleb and got him dressed. The boy clutched his stuffed bear, sensing the importance of the day. The courthouse was 40 minutes away. They drove in convoy, Roland's truck with Nora and Caleb, Iris following. Patricia met them on the steps, professional in a grey suit. Trevor's already inside with 3 lawyers. He's not taking chances. Neither are we, Roland said. Inside, Trevor stood near the courtroom with his legal team. When he saw them, his expression hardened. His eyes fixed on Caleb, and the boy immediately buried his face against Nora's leg. That single gesture spoke volumes. Remember, Patricia said quietly, stay calm, answer honestly, don't let them provoke you. Judge Alice Brennan was already seated, a woman in her 60s with steel-grey hair and sharp eyes. Be seated, she said. We're here for an emergency custody hearing. I've reviewed the initial filings. Mr. Whitfield, you're requesting custody based on kidnapping allegations. Miss Whitfield, you're requesting full custody based on documented domestic violence. Correct? Both lawyers confirmed. Before we begin, Judge Brennan continued, I want to address yesterday's restraining order violation. Mr. Whitfield, you appeared at Mr. Thatcher's residence despite an active order prohibiting contact. Care to explain? Trevor's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client was concerned for his son's welfare. The restraining order doesn't have exceptions for concern. It means stay away, period. Judge Brennan's tone was ice. Mr. Whitfield, you're a prosecutor. You know better. Consider this a warning, clear? Yes, Your Honor, Trevor said through gritted teeth. Let's proceed, Ms. Whitfield's counsel. Present your case. Patricia stood and began methodically laying out evidence. Photographs of bruises, medical records, threatening text messages. Police reports filed during the marriage. Documentation of Trevor's harassment. Your Honor, this is textbook domestic abuse, Patricia said. Mr. Whitfield controlled every aspect of Miss Whitfield's life. When she finally left, he used his position as a prosecutor to track and harass them. Judge Brennan read the documentation carefully, her expression growing harder. Patricia called Nora to testify. Nora stood on shaking legs and took the stand, swearing to tell the truth. Patricia guided her gently. Nora described meeting Trevor, the whirlwind romance, the gradual revelation of his controlling nature, the rules, the restrictions, the punishments. Tell us about the incident that made you leave, Patricia said. Nora took a breath. Trevor came home angry one night. Caleb had left toys out. He started yelling at him, backing him into a corner. Caleb was 4 years old, terrified. When I intervened, Trevor shoved me into the wall. Hard enough that I hit my head. Her voice shook but didn't break. Caleb saw it. And I realized if I didn't get us out, Trevor would destroy us both. And Caleb's behavior since leaving. He stopped talking. He has nightmares, but since staying with Roland, he started to heal. He smiles now. He feels safe. Trevor's lawyer stood for cross-examination, trying to paint Nora as unstable, as a liar. Isn't it true you took the child without permission? I left an abusive situation to protect my son. Isn't it true you're living with a man you barely know? Patricia objected. Relevance, Your Honor. I'll allow it, but be careful, Judge Brennan warned. Roland Thatcher provided shelter when we had nowhere to go, Nora said firmly. He's given us safety and stability. My son trusts him, loves him. That's not inappropriate, that's healing. The lawyer tried several angles, but Nora held firm. She didn't waver. She simply told the truth. Next, Patricia called Roland. He took the stand calmly. Mr. Thatcher, describe your relationship with Ms. Whitfield and Caleb. Roland told the story simply, the knock on his door during the storm, letting them stay, watching them heal. What has your observation been of Ms. Whitfield as a mother? She's devoted, patient. Everything she does is focused on Caleb's well-being. She's exactly what a good mother should be, Trevor's lawyer cross-examined. Isn't it true you're romantically involved with Ms. Whitfield? Yes, Roland said simply. Doesn't this color your testimony? I care about Nora and Caleb. That's not bias, that's honesty. My feelings don't change the facts. Trevor abused them. The evidence proves it. The lawyer tried to rattle him, but Roland remained calm. Then Trevor took the stand. He was polished and confident, playing the concerned father. He denied the abuse allegations. I'm a prosecutor, he said earnestly. I uphold the law. I would never violate it. I just want my son back, but Patricia was ready. She produced medical records, police reports, witness statements. She confronted him with threatening text messages. This is from you, correct? She asked, showing his phone number. Trevor hesitated. I was upset. Yes or no? Did you send this message threatening Ms. Whitfield? Yes, but... And this one, where you said you'd use your connections to track her? Yes, Patricia continued methodically, dismantling his credibility. With each answer, Trevor grew more agitated, his facade cracking. Judge Brennan called for a brief recess. Everyone filed out. Nora was shaking. You did great, Patricia assured them. Both of you. When they returned, Judge Brennan had clearly made her decision. Her expression was stern as she looked at Trevor. Mr. Whitfield, I've heard testimony and reviewed extensive documentation. I'm troubled by what I've seen. Trevor's confidence wavered. This court takes domestic violence seriously. The evidence shows a clear pattern of control, intimidation, and abuse. She turned to Caleb, sitting quietly between Nora and Roland. Young man, would you come up here for a moment? Caleb looked at his mother, who nodded. Slowly, he walked to the judge's bench. She leaned down to his level, her stern expression softening. What's your name, sweetheart? Judge Brennan asked gently. Caleb, the boy whispered. That's a nice bear. What's his name? Mr. Bear, the judge smiled. Caleb, I want to ask you something. Do you feel safe where you're living now? Caleb nodded. Can you tell me who you live with? My mama and Roland, and how does living there make you feel? Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to the judge. Judge Brennan unfolded it carefully. It was one of Caleb's drawings, 3 stick figures in front of a house. One was Nora, one was Caleb holding Mr. Bear, and one was labeled Roland. Above the house, Caleb had drawn a big heart and written, My Home. The courtroom was silent. Judge Brennan studied the drawing with unmistakable compassion. This is beautiful, Caleb. Thank you. She looked at Trevor. Mr. Whitfield, would you like to see your son's drawing? Trevor approached. When he saw the picture, his face went red, then pale. The drawing showed everything. His absence, his irrelevance, his replacement by a man who'd shown the boy safety. Caleb, Trevor said, voice strained. I'm your father. Don't you want to come home with me? The boy looked at him with no recognition, only wariness. He took a step back, then turned and ran to Nora, climbing into her lap. The message couldn't have been clearer. Judge Brennan's expression hardened. "Return to your seat, Mr. Whitfield." She waited until everyone was settled. "I presided over family court for 23 years. Few cases have been as clear-cut as this one." She looked directly at Trevor. "You're a prosecutor. You understand evidence, and the evidence against you is overwhelming. I've seen the medical records, the police reports, the threatening messages. Most importantly, I've seen that child's reaction to you, fear and avoidance. Children don't lie about who makes them feel safe." She shuffled papers. "The restraining order remains in full effect and is hereby extended for 2 years. You are prohibited from any contact except through court-approved channels." Trevor's face went scarlet. "Your Honor, I have rights. You forfeited those rights through your behavior. Let me continue." Her tone was steel. "I'm granting full legal and physical custody to Ms. Whitfield, effective immediately. You will have no visitation rights at this time. After 1 year, you may petition for supervised visitation if you complete anger management and domestic violence intervention programs. This is outrageous. Mr. Whitfield, you will not interrupt." Judge Brennan's voice could have cut glass. "Furthermore, I'm recommending to the Bar Association they investigate your conduct. Using your position to harass a domestic violence victim is a serious ethical violation." The courtroom erupted. Trevor's lawyers protested. Patricia smiled. Nora burst into tears, clutching Caleb. Roland put his arm around both of them. Judge Brennan banged her gavel. "Order, Ms. Whitfield. I commend you for your courage. You protected your child, and that's what good mothers do. Mr. Thatcher, your willingness to provide shelter speaks well of your character." She looked at Caleb. "Young man, you keep drawing those pictures. Remember, home isn't just a place. It's wherever you feel safe and loved." She banged the gavel. "This court is adjourned." As they stood to leave, Trevor made one last desperate move. He pushed past his lawyers toward Nora and Caleb. "You can't do this," he hissed. "You can't take my son." Sheriff Garrett was there instantly. "Mr. Whitfield, step back now. She's poisoned him against me. The judge has ruled. You're in violation right now. Leave before I arrest you." Trevor looked around wildly. At the judge, at his lawyers, at Nora and Caleb protected by Roland and the sheriff. He saw he'd lost completely. "This isn't over," he said, voice shaking with rage. "You'll do what the court ordered," Judge Brennan said from the bench, "or you'll spend time in jail. Your choice." Trevor stormed out, his lawyers scrambling to follow. The courtroom emptied until only their group remained. Patricia hugged Nora tightly. "You did it. You're free." Nora couldn't speak, could only cry and hold Caleb. The boy was smiling, sensing the relief around him. Roland shook Patricia's hand. "Thank you for everything. Thank you for giving her a safe place to land. Your wife would be proud." "She would," Iris said, wiping tears. Outside, the winter sun felt warmer. Nora stood on the steps, breathing deeply, tasting freedom for the first time in years. "Is it really over?" she asked Roland. "The legal part is. Trevor might appeal, but it won't matter. The evidence is too strong." He pulled her close. "You're safe now. Both of you." Caleb tugged on Roland's sleeve. When Roland looked down, the boy raised his arms. Roland lifted him, and Caleb wrapped his arms around Roland's neck. "Love you," the boy whispered, the first time he'd said it. Roland's throat tightened. "Love you too, buddy." "So much." They stood together on the courthouse steps, a family forged not by blood but by choice, by courage, by refusing to let fear win. Sheriff Garrett approached. "I meant what I said about watching Trevor. Be careful over the next few weeks. Keep your doors locked. If he shows up, call immediately." "We will," Roland promised. "You did good. Real good." Garrett tipped his hat. "Your wife, Caroline, I knew her. She'd be proud of you right now." After he left, they stood in silence. Then Iris cleared her throat. "This calls for celebration. What do you say we stop for lunch? Real lunch. We've earned it." "Ice cream," Caleb said clearly. "Can we get ice cream?" Everyone laughed, the tension finally breaking. They piled into their vehicles, Caleb chattering about ice cream flavors. On the drive back, Roland glanced in the rearview mirror at Nora and Caleb. Nora was smiling, really smiling. Caleb was playing with his bear, talking to it in a happy stream. This was what victory looked like. Not dramatic or flashy, but quiet and profound. A mother and child who could breathe freely. A boy who felt safe enough to speak. A future that was open and bright. They stopped at a diner, squeezing into a booth. They ordered burgers and fries and milkshakes. When the food came, Caleb said grace without being asked. Thank you for food. Thank you for Mama. Thank you for Roland. Thank you for being safe. Amen. There wasn't a dry eye at the table. Iris hugged them all goodbye. I'll come visit soon. Maybe help you guys figure out next steps. Next steps? Nora asked. Iris looked at her father with a knowing smile. I think Dad has some questions he wants to ask you. Eventually, she winked. Welcome to the family, Nora. The drive back to the cabin felt different, lighter, like they were finally going home instead of returning to temporary shelter. When they pulled up, Caleb was already unbuckling. Can we build a snowman? Absolutely, Roland said. They spent the afternoon outside, building not one but 3 snowmen, a whole snow family. Caleb directed everything, his laughter ringing through the forest. As the sun set, they went inside. Roland built up the fire while Nora made hot chocolate. They sat together, Caleb curled between them, Mr. Bear tucked under his arm. Tell me a story, Caleb asked Roland. What kind of story? A happy one? About a family? Roland looked at Nora, saw his emotions reflected in her eyes. Then he began. Once upon a time, there was a man who lived alone in a cabin in the woods. He thought he'd always be alone, that his story was finished. But one snowy night, there was a knock at his door. Caleb smiled. That's you. And the man opened the door, and his whole world changed. Because sometimes the best families are the ones we choose. The ones we build from courage and kindness and love. And they lived happily ever after. Caleb asked hopefully. Roland pulled them both close. Yes, they lived happily ever after. Outside, night fell over the mountains. Inside, 3 people who'd found each other against all odds sat together in the firelight, safe and together and home. Spring came to the mountains 6 weeks later, melting the snow and revealing earth beneath. Green shoots pushed through warming soil, and the forest filled with birdsong. Roland stood on the porch early one morning, coffee in hand, watching the world wake up. Behind him, the cabin stirred to life. Caleb's footsteps padding down the hallway. Nora's voice, soft and warm, asking what he wanted for breakfast. The sounds of family, of home, of a life fully lived. The legal proceedings had concluded quietly. Trevor had tried to appeal Judge Brennan's ruling, but his lawyers advised it was futile. More importantly, the Bar Association had opened their investigation, and Trevor was fighting to keep his prosecutor position. He'd backed off completely, focused on saving his career. Sheriff Garrett had kept watch for weeks, but there'd been no further incidents. No threatening calls, no surprise visits, no attempts to violate the custody order. Trevor had finally accepted defeat. Nora had flourished in the freedom. She'd moved to full-time at the bookstore, and Dorothy had made her assistant manager. She'd started taking online courses, working toward finishing her degree. She laughed more easily now, moved without constant vigilance. The fear had receded, replaced by confidence and joy. Caleb had transformed entirely. He talked constantly now, making up for months of silence. He'd started at the local elementary school and made friends quickly. The nightmares had stopped. His drawings no longer showed dark figures or scared faces, only happy scenes of their life together. And Roland had come fully alive again. The cabin that had been a mausoleum for his grief had become a home filled with warmth and purpose. He'd reconnected with old friends, started volunteering at the community center, became part of the town again. This particular morning was special. Roland had been planning it for weeks, waiting for the right moment. He'd talked to Iris, gotten her blessing. He'd talked to Dorothy, who'd kept Nora distracted while he made arrangements. He'd even talked to Caleb, who'd been excited and sworn to keep the secret. After breakfast together, pancakes with fresh berries, Roland suggested a walk. The trails were clear now, the ground firm. They bundled up and set out through the forest. Caleb ran ahead, exploring, while Roland and Nora walked hand in hand. The forest was alive with spring, new leaves unfurling, flowers pushing through soil, animals emerging from winter dens. They walked to a clearing Roland knew well, where the trees opened to reveal the mountains beyond. A small creek ran through it, swollen with snowmelt. Caroline had loved this spot. "It's beautiful," Nora said. "It's my favorite place in the world," Roland said. "I wanted to share it with you." Caleb had found the creek and was throwing pebbles. Roland called him over. "Buddy, remember what we talked about?" Caleb nodded seriously, his eyes bright with excitement. Roland turned to Nora, taking both her hands. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. "Nora, 6 months ago you knocked on my door in a snowstorm. You changed my life completely. You reminded me what it means to be alive, to have purpose, to love and be loved. You and Caleb brought light back into a life I'd let go dark." Nora's eyes were already filling with tears. "I know we haven't known each other long by normal standards, but I also know with complete certainty that I want to spend the rest of my life with you, with both of you." Roland knelt down, pulling a small box from his pocket. Caleb bounced excitedly beside him. "Nora Whitfield, will you marry me? Will you let me be your husband, and let me be Caleb's father? Will you make this family official and permanent?" Nora was crying openly. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Roland slipped the ring on her finger, a simple gold band with 3 small stones, one for each of them, and stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her deeply. Caleb cheered and jumped around them. "Does this mean you're my real dad now?" Caleb asked. "If you want me to be," Roland said, kneeling to the boy's level. "I want it. More than anything." Caleb threw his arms around Roland's neck. "Can I call you Dad?" Roland's voice broke. "I would be honored." They stood together in the clearing, wrapped in each other's arms, while around them spring continued its work of renewal. The creek sang. The mountains stood witness. The forest, which had seen so much grief, now held joy. That evening, Roland called Iris to share the news. She screamed with happiness and said she was driving up immediately. She arrived with champagne and sparkling cider for Caleb, and they toasted to new beginnings. "Mom would have loved Nora," Iris said, wiping happy tears. "She would have loved seeing you this happy again." "I think she'd approve," Roland agreed. "I think she'd say I'd mourned long enough." They set the wedding date for June, wanting something small and simple at the cabin. Patricia agreed to officiate. Dorothy offered to handle food. Friends promised to help set up. Roland started adoption proceedings for Caleb. The boy would take Roland's last name, would legally be his son in every way that mattered. The weeks that followed were filled with planning and preparation. Nora made arrangements to change her name to Thatcher after the wedding. She opened a bank account, got a new phone number, filed paperwork to cut the last ties to her old life. She was building a new identity, not defined by abuse and fear, but by strength and freedom. The wedding day arrived warm and perfect. They decorated the cabin and yard with wild flowers from the forest. Chairs were set up in the clearing where Roland had proposed. The guest list was small, fewer than 30 people, all close friends and chosen family. Caleb wore a little suit and carried the rings, taking his role with utmost seriousness. Iris stood as maid of honor, beaming. Frank stood up with Roland, honored to be included. Patricia officiated beautifully, speaking about different forms love takes, about choosing family, about courage and second chances. When she asked if anyone objected, Caleb shouted, "No!" with such force that everyone laughed. Roland and Nora exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Roland promised to be a safe harbor, to honor Nora's strength, to love Caleb as his own. Nora promised to build a life of joy rather than fear, to trust in their love, to create a home filled with laughter. When Patricia pronounced them married, the cheer could have been heard in the next county. They kissed, while Caleb stood between them, his hands on both their arms, binding them together. The reception was simple but joyful. They ate and drank and danced. Caleb taught Roland a silly dance from school. Iris and her boyfriend Peter announced their own engagement. More joy piled on joy. As evening fell and friends departed, Roland and Nora and Caleb sat together on the porch. The boy was falling asleep between them, exhausted from excitement. "Happy?" Roland asked Nora. "Beyond words," she said. "6 months ago I was homeless and terrified. Now I'm married to a wonderful man. Our son is safe and thriving, and I'm sitting in front of the most beautiful view I've ever seen." "It's real," Roland assured her. "And it's permanent. This is your life now." "Our life." They carried sleeping Caleb to bed together, tucking him in with Mr. Bear. Then they returned to the porch, sitting close and watching stars emerge. "Thank you," Nora said quietly. "For what?" "For opening your door, for seeing us, for standing up to Trevor, for loving us." She took his hand. "For giving us a home." Roland pulled her close, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. The loss of Caroline, the years of grief, the snowy night when everything changed. Every sorrow, every hardship had led to this, to love and family and purpose. "Sometimes I think Caroline sent you to me," he said. "That she knew I needed saving as much as you did." Maybe she did. Maybe this was always meant to be. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen. Inside, Caleb slept peacefully, safe and loved. Around them the mountains stood eternal. Above them, stars wheeled in ancient patterns. This was what happiness looked like, Roland thought. Not the absence of hardship, but the presence of love. Not the erasure of the past, but the courage to embrace the future. He'd opened his door to strangers on a cold winter night, and they'd given him back his life. They'd reminded him that hearts can heal, that families can be chosen, that it's never too late for second chances. And as spring gave way to summer, as the forest grew lush, as their new life stretched out before them full of promise, Roland understood the truth Caroline had tried to teach him. Happiness isn't something you save for later. It's something you choose, moment by moment, day by day. It's the decision to open your door when someone knocks. It's the courage to love again after loss. Roland had made that choice, had opened his door and his heart, and he would spend the rest of his days grateful for that snowy night, that desperate knock. Those two souls who'd needed shelter and given him everything in return. Home, he'd learned, isn't just a place. It's the people who make you feel safe. It's the love you build together. It's the family you choose. And this cabin in the woods, this woman beside him, this child sleeping safely inside, this was home in the truest sense of the word. This was where he belonged, where they all belonged, together.